did a video on the police officer in the Ku Klux Klan, and I want to reiterate and go over my experiences of organized stalking in the Muskegon area, the West Michigan area as well. And I remember when I first started realizing there was something wrong. Um, I didn't know what was happening. Nobody came and told me that my neighbors were stalking me. Uh, there's other communities I was in as well, around the Muskegon area, and the same thing was going on. And I had to learn everything for myself. And looking back now, I can definitely see how a more vulnerable individual would have took their own life, or perhaps took somebody else's life, or actually lost their mind because of organized stalking. And I have a friend, he passed away recently. His name is Brandon Davis, and he grew up in Grand Haven, Michigan. I had met him when we were teenagers, around 13, 14. And, we kind of clicked. We always just liked each other, you know what I mean? We'd always tell jokes with each other and stuff. And as he got older, he ended up in a situation where he partied a lot. And he was explaining to me, like about a month ago, actually. He said, man, you know that YouTube stuff where you're talking about the gang stalking? I said, yeah. He said, man, I thought you were crazy. And he said, I've known you for so long. I know it's not like you to just make something like that up. And he wasn't aware of my conspiracy research. He just knew me from when we were younger. He said that's never been like you to just come out and make up something that's not true and just keep going with, you know what I mean? And so started watching these videos of mine, and he saw the cars with the lights, the brightening tactics, and then he told me, he said, man, this is happening to me. I said, where is it happening at? He said, as soon as I started hanging around you, I started getting followed around. And Brandon was never approached by anybody. And Brandon Davis was never approached by anybody and asked to participate. It just started happening to him. Revell Warren, who's a good friend of mine who's in prison, he was never approached by anybody and asked to do anything. And he ended up in jail. So there's certain individuals who are more vulnerable to participating in this activity. And what goes on is, if somebody knows you really well, a lot of times they'll be the people who are participating or financing the stalking or encouraging it. They won't try to get other people involved that know you that well. They won't try to get those people to participate because they know those people have a certain level of attachment to you. So, and if they do it, they'll have to do it in a much more clever way and put a lot of energy into it. And so nobody ever approached him or asked him to do anything. And him and his girlfriend that he had, she told me, she said, she was being followed around too. And they said as soon as they met me and started happening, he recently killed himself. And everybody thinks he killed himself because he was currently using drugs. But I don't think that's why. I have been knowing him for years. People don't kill themselves just because they're high on drugs. It doesn't work that way. And I think I think this organized stalking stuff put so much insecurity in him. He may have, he ran to go do that. There's people out there that are vulnerable like that. He was a friend of mine, and so I just can't believe, that stuff like that happens to people, and there's no laws or no investigations into organized stalking. I found that the reason why organized stalking continues is because nobody's being punished for it. I realistically thought when I came out of my courses, I would create a certain level of awareness, and individuals participating in it would feel some sense of shame, or there would be enough community support to start an inquiry. And what I realized is that's not really how it works. How it works is if people commit a crime, if they're not punished for it, there will be no need to change. So the reason why people continue doing this is because there's no consequences. People have to learn consequences. People have to go into a courtroom and learn to be prosecuted for a crime if they're committing it, or they'll never stop. Like if somebody assaults somebody or sells dope, they can be prosecuted. But if a whole network is misusing elements of society to harass somebody and no one's ever prosecuted for it, that's saying that it's okay to commit this crime, to do this activity. And then they try to discredit the individual to cover it up. I've had 4 different people around Muskegon, no, 5 actually, explain to me that they know what's going on, that it's happened to them, that they're being stalked. Like 5 different sources. And one of the guys said, man, everything happening to you on YouTube is happening to me. I live in downtown Muskegon. He lived over in the Nelson neighborhood. And he said it wasn't happening to him as much, but it was the same kind of stuff was happening to him. And he was afraid to talk about it. He didn't want to go online and talk about it. And I was just like, man, your civil rights are being violated. You're not going to talk about it? You know? I mean, imagine if the people who founded the Declaration of Independence never talked about how they were suffering from religious persecution. You know, it would still be going on, right? So, but the people that I've seen in the Muskegon area, they're not compelled to stop a behavior unless they know they're going to be punished for it, unless there's some sort of consequence. They'll just keep doing it. And so you have people participating in organized stalking and different sorts of activities, even online harassment, and they don't feel compelled to stop because they're not seeing any consequences. They think they can always sweep it under the rug. They can always make up a new lie. They can always influence somebody to help them get out of the problem. And that's exactly how organized crime works. There's a pattern of corruption. If you go and you talk to an expert on organized crime, the first thing they're going to tell you is there's a pattern of corruption. People involved in organized crime, like white-collar crime and different sorts of crimes, there's a pattern of corruption and covering up what they're doing so they don't get caught. And that's the same thing with organized stalking. You have white-collar crime. You have occupational crime. There's people at their workplace doing corporate bullying and corporate mobbing who are doing this stuff. And I think it's just scratching the surface. Who knows what else is going on? Like, who knows, I mean, who knows how many other people in Muskegon are being targeted in this way and how they're being targeted. And if nobody's held responsible for that sort of activity, if people are not held responsible for their participation, then it's going to continue. Same thing with the Ku Klux Klan. Same thing with the Nazis. The Nazis sat there and demonized a bunch of innocent people, civilian innocent people, demonized them, and got everybody to get on board and just destroy these people's whole way of life. The Jewish people, gay people, blacks, even nuns, priests. I mean, the Nazis even killed their own people, you know? So everybody bought into this thing and dehumanized these people and talked bad about them and like character assassinated the people and made it to the point where they didn't even have basic human rights. And then so nobody would care. They villainized the people so much, nobody cared when anything happened to them. And had Adolf Hitler and had the Nazis learned consequences, it never would have got that far. There never would have been a Holocaust. Same thing with the Ku Klux Klan. You know, all the lynchings they did back in the 30s, had there been more of a voice against it, it would have stopped a lot sooner. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan and the stuff going on in Mississippi, it'd still be going on today at the same rate it was back then. Had nothing been done about it. So just silencing yourself and not saying anything is the stupidest thing you can do. I mean, who knows how many children, like there's children being born right now I mean, they're going to be followed. They're going to be targeted by whatever organizations are out there doing this. And so I think it's stupidity for people to get involved in this sort of thing. I really do.